Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Casey Willis, and I am the podcast manager at Goody Nation. For those of you who don't know what Goody Nation is, we are an organization that helps to bridge relationship gaps for so many deserving founders. These are founders from underrepresented communities. These are founders from the social entrepreneurship sector, folks who don't often always have the connections that they need to accelerate their ventures and their careers. And that's what we're here to help them do through coaching, through mentorship, through cohort style learning, all the things that they need to help better and further their careers. And so you are listening right now to the Why Relationships Matter podcast. Why do we do this show? Well, not only are things like providing opportunities to get capital or to get that next, deal important, those opportunities don't arise unless the relationships are there in place, those authentic, intentional relationships. And so we love discussing with various just powerhouse minds throughout the industry about how relationship building has affected their lives and their careers. And so today we have another very special guest in the house. We have Jermeen Sherman, who's the managing director of Black Ambition. Welcome today, Jermeen.
Thank you so much for having me. Delighted to connect.
Of course, this is going to be great. So to start with, our classic Goody Nation question: what is your professional origin story?
Well, my professional origin story is so connected to just my identity. I grew up in Atlanta, early 90s, single mom, very much working class family. And I like to say that I was incredibly fortunate enough to go to some of the best and some of the worst schools. Really cultivated character, know-how, and a couple other skills, I think, in some really intentional ways that I'm grateful for. My origin story really starts with my first mentor, a gentleman by the name of James Rowland. Shout out to James, who is based in Atlanta, and an educator at Emory University, who was the first person to introduce me to these ideas about collective identity and collective ownership and social impact, and what it means to really be in charge of transforming communities, and moving the needle on kind of outcomes that matter, from a place that really empowers the individual to have a vision of what success looks like. And so based on just my learnings from him, the books that he gave me, watching him in schools and churches, really just connecting with under-resourced communities in a way that empowered them to change things, kind of charted my career path. So my very first job was an opportunity that he created for me with a small nonprofit called the Atlanta Urban Debate League. We essentially went into the lowest performing schools, oftentimes in public housing authorities, identified the lowest performing students, and we taught them debate education, which seems kind of weird because you think about debate as this like exclusionary activity that can be difficult to access. It requires travel and research and all these licenses to be good at. But at its core, it was an opportunity to teach kids to advocate for their needs, right? To learn conflict resolution skills, to learn research skills, to really think through what do I need? How do I advocate for it? And how do I do that in a compelling manner that really sort of builds coalitions around me? And that work started in just a couple of small schools, and was eventually scaled with support from the Department of Justice and other funders. Oddly enough, it's like a gang reduction intervention, which is not what we were trying to do, but you need the dollars to do great things. And so that was the first opportunity where I literally saw kids transform and empowered to change the direction of their lives on their own. Oh, I think something happened there. Sorry, I think my camera's doing some wonky stuff, but I will get that adjusted.
All right, it is all good.
There we go. I think we're good, right?
Okay, yes.
And so, yeah, first time I saw like kids really chart new paths and stick to it, kids from really challenged communities, now matriculating into trade school and four-year universities and becoming entrepreneurs. And I think that was like, I described that as like a job that fed my soul. It was very much aligned with what I think my kind of higher purpose is in life. Education and life and love took me in different places, but ended up in Los Angeles, where I later go to business school. Frankly, after spending a couple years in academic and corporate settings where I felt like, I was just adding dollars to a balance sheet, and I did my volunteer work on the weekends, and I really wanted to figure out a way to merge those things, right? How can I do the work that I love that's in service of vulnerable communities, oftentimes at schools, with students, with foster youth, in a professional setting? How do I make that my 9 to 5? So I actually went back to business school with the objective of becoming a nonprofit executive, right? Leading a nonprofit organization, building or transferring those traditional kind of business principles from business settings to nonprofits. And while in business school, I made my first career transition in child welfare. So through a fellowship, had an opportunity to lead some systems change work in Los Angeles, one of the largest child welfare systems in the world. Through that fellowship, kind of came on in more as a chief of staff role. From there, went into more public sector management consulting at traditional consulting firms. And after a couple of years, just felt like I had a better vision for how I wanted to do that work that didn't compel me to be beholden to funders, but instead to really communities. And so I got really focused on like human-centered research and human-centered design practices. Spent a little bit of time kind of publishing about that, and decided that I was ready to start my own firm. So I started a company, advisory firm called Community Up, really wanting to work with government agencies and NGOs to optimize social services delivery. And I remember like chatting with some mentors about, am I ready for this? I'm leaving my first comfortable kind of paycheck opportunity. What does it look like? And a good friend of mine told me about this project that Pharrell was launching with Black Ambition to fund diverse entrepreneurs. And my immediate reaction was like, this is so different from what I've done. I tend to work with more at-risk or vulnerable populations, but this is an opportunity to work with minority communities that are innovators and leaders. And that felt different, but then I got really excited about what it looks like to work on the other end of the spectrum, right? To work in service of folks who are creating the opportunities that would elevate kind of the populations that I traditionally worked in service for. And so that's kind of what brought me to Black Ambition initially, to just design some programs, the prize process, and more recently as the managing director, where I oversee our national prize competition, all of our international initiatives for supporting diverse entrepreneurs from the diaspora, and of course, operations. Black Ambition is such a gift, and kind of to go back to sort of how I describe my work, it's like it truly does feed my soul. It was founded by Pharrell Williams with the goal of creating both the space, the conditions, the relationships for underrepresented founders, Black and Hispanic founders to excel uninterrupted, right? In a space where they could just create and vision and not deal with all the BS associated with being a woman or a person of color, or having to deal with an inability to access funding. And so from this space, I really get to go out and curate programs that are incredibly responsive to what our founders need, whether that's product placement relationships, sort of retail opportunities, partnership cultivation. It's just a gift to both create pathways, but also to see this like peer network of entrepreneurs that have emerged with founders supporting one another, founders kind of reaching back and mentoring others. And so it feels like this truly self-sustained pipeline of transformation that is going to have deep impacts for years to come when you think about like the wealth creation opportunities in our communities.
Such an interesting story, going from working with youth in schools to working with founders who in some ways are just as like eager and anxious to learn probably as school children. I'm curious for you, where do you think this spark started with you in wanting to work in a capacity where you're helping other people better themselves? There's so many opportunities to, like, as you said, just work and make money and, get the balance sheet looking right for somebody else. But where do you think within yourself that desire to like push past that and do more started from?
Yeah, honestly, it's a result of my personal experiences. I mean, I grew up observing firsthand that talent was equally distributed, but opportunity was not. And unfortunately, I was on the side of no opportunity. And so it was, I'd say luck, or in some ways, but maybe it's fortuitous in another way, that a couple of like teachers and just cool folks like James Rowland and other mentors would kind of pull me aside and give me some direction. And advice that frankly changed and transformed the trajectory of my own life. Lots of us have lots of stories of being the first in their families to do lots of things, and that was certainly my story. I went to some of the worst, kind of failing, the dangerous schools early on, and had an opportunity to go to some of the better schools. And so um, I got to experience what it's like to be in environments where there is an opportunity. You kind of got to scrap for every opportunity that you get, or really kind of make a name for yourself, or kind of dream beyond what's in your immediate environment. And I've been in other environments where like you didn't actually have to do much, but if your mom and dad were incredibly connected, then things would kind of fall into your lap. And so I think that after experiencing that a lot, I just really wanted to be on the side of like helping really talented folks actualize their dreams, but also creating the space and conditions for people to dream beyond their immediate needs, right? It's hard to think about what it means to be an entrepreneur and to work for yourself if you've never seen that, right? Like, and that was certainly my case. The concept of entrepreneurship as like a primary career option was not something that I understood until probably like grad school. Honestly, I thought that you get a job, you work hard, you grind, you 9 to 5, you save a little bit, and maybe when you are approaching retirement age, you can then afford to do something that's a little more daring, or that you love. And just being in this space and being able to work with like entrepreneurs coming out of HBCUs who are like, I'm not going the corporate route at all. I have this idea. I'm going to build this tech platform, and this is how I'm going to sustain myself. And so that just energizes me, and I love doing it, and I'm always looking for opportunities to do more of it.
Fantastic. So something that you mentioned earlier is that when you were working more in sort of the corporate side, you would do volunteer work on the weekends. And so I'm fascinated by that for so many reasons. I like a lot of people like finding the time to do volunteer work is like a whole thing. And so the fact that you were dedicating your weekends to doing volunteer work, again, is just a testament to your desire to help folks, obviously. But I'm curious to know, what are some of the causes that you were or are still most passionate about? And as a follow-up, how do you see volunteer work as a potential relationship builder, even though it may not directly be tied to someone's career or entrepreneurship venture? How is getting involved in volunteer work a way to build relationships?
Yeah, of course. To address the first part of your question, I tend to either find opportunities or they find me that are in service of kids. So, every reading program, I love doing those kinds of things. For me, education was just the key that unlocked a lot of doors for me. And while I recognize that there are lots of different paths, that's the one that I think I understand the most. And so where I try and be of service. So lots of elementary, middle school based like reading programs, tutoring programs, especially coming out of COVID. That's just an incredible need with being able to connect with youth and make sure that they're getting, or that they are caught up or getting caught up academically. I live in LA, where homelessness is a growing problem. And so being able to be helpful there is top of mind for me. So I do a lot of work at our local food kitchen, organizing food, serving food. It just seems like such an easy way to give back and to be of service. And also, like, I am a person that finds inspiration from anywhere, and people have the most interesting stories, right? And people, it's a series of events that land someone in those kinds of situations. And so thinking about network building, like I think it's important to build relationships that are both complementary to your skill set and to the direction that a person is looking to grow in, but also strategically to build networks with people who are 100% not like you, right? Who see the world differently, who challenge your worldview, because I think that's how you kind of test and grow and evolve in ideas. And so, I don't volunteer. When I think about my volunteer work, I have never actually thought about it as much as like a connection to my professional work. But oftentimes, as I think about it now, I'm sitting alongside retired VPs from companies who do this work, who used to lead CSR initiatives and are able to facilitate introductions, right? I mean, you're sitting there stuffing a bag of grapefruits for 4 or 5 hours. You get to talking about what you do for a living and kind of what you're passionate about. And so I think one thing I think in mind is just like, you never know who you're going to meet, or you never know who someone is able to facilitate connection to you. And so in all that you do, or in all that I do, I definitely try to approach it with an open mind, particularly when I'm meeting new people, to think about how I can be an ally, but also to keep an open mind about how they could potentially be an ally to either a project that I'm doing, the work that I'm doing. But network building it's so important. It's maybe weird to say, but I used to, I was like really uncomfortable, and maybe I shouldn't say it's a fact, but I do think it's a fact. It's quite uncomfortable with the idea that like you could be the smartest person in the room. You could be the most deserving person in the room, and opportunities could pass you by because you weren't well networked, right? Because people didn't know who you are because you didn't have the right network. And so, yeah, it's just something that I keep in mind, that relationships really are kind of, I think, the life and death of what's able to move forward and what isn't. So being mindful of building, prioritizing relationships is everything.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, the reason why we do this podcast is because, not only just anecdotally, statistically, we've seen, the folks who have those connections are the folks who get further in life, in business. And so, as someone who has started their own venture and has also worked in different organizations, how do you, as far as like your own personal / professional networking, like how do you balance, going to the mixers and the networking events and the webinars and with, having a job and a family and other activities that you need to do?
Yeah. I think the trick is to approach network building as a part of your job, right? Because it is. I don't imagine that most folks are really sort of getting things done as an individual. Things happen based on like kind of coalition building. And so I think it's a matter of how do you find time to get through your inbox, right? You schedule the time, you prioritize being able to do that. So, and a large part of my work really is about partnership cultivation. How do we build partnerships with different corporations, individuals, philanthropies to support our entrepreneurs? And so that lends itself to some natural element of networking, whether that's alongside big cultural events, professional conferences, social events, right? Those are all opportunities to meet folks. For me, I kind of think about it as like professional development and continuous learning, right? Like you kind of always find time for that. And I find that when I am able to attend, kind of an industry conference or kind of, panel conversations or, places where conversations are happening around what people who do similar work, it's such a learning opportunity. It's both meeting people, coalition building, finding folks who can be thought partners to you, but also literally learning like what's happening in industry, what's best practices, what trends are happening. And so kind of combining both of those into kind of your traditional professional development learning time with your networking, I think is the approach that I've taken, and it works pretty well for me.
Very cool. So Black Ambition is an organization that serves Black and Latino founders. And at this particular point in our socio-political climate, in some ways, DEI and different efforts within the business world, the entrepreneurship space, little scary. Both on like just an anecdotal level to there are lawsuits for against organizations who are aiming to help Black and brown founders, programs being cut left and right. And so for Black and brown founders right now, do you have any advice for either continuing to cultivate their own networks or finding spaces to, continue this relationship building or this network building in the midst of this kind of scary time right now?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's incredibly scary. And unfortunately, we've been here before, right? And in some ways, it's a real testament to the fact that we're kind of onto something, right? Like, it's incredibly difficult to kind of innovate an environment where you're being attacked for literally just trying to kind of achieve equity of access. But I think that there are a few things that folks can do. One, I think it's just important to lean in and to be resolute when it comes to building and innovating, and being committed to a vision of success that is your own. And in doing that work, I think it's natural that you are able to build a coalition of supporters, people who share your vision, who share your commitment to equity. But also, I think in building those kinds of coalitions, you find and discover resources that maybe you haven't tapped into, right? We've got founders who at one point were trying to raise funds to bring on a CFO, but in connecting and learning about their mutual businesses, realized that there's an opportunity for them to, across 4 organizations, share a fractional CFO. That is a major resource efficiency, a cost savings for all of them. And it's not necessarily about like relationship building, but you get to that point by by being connected to networks who are kind of doing similar things or tackling similar issues, and where you can kind of share in some of the solutioning. So I think it's really about kind of leaning in and staying committed. And it's also, I find silver lining and identifying, there are organizations who are equally committed and are doubling down on their commitments to be of service to underrepresented and underestimated founders. And so finding alignment with those organizations for follow-on kind of funding opportunities, other programmatic supportive opportunities. And the third piece is just like looking inward, right? I love being Black for so many reasons, but the thing that I celebrate the most about being a brown person is that, like, we get things done and we can make things out of nothing, and we find opportunities where they don't exist. And so looking inward for solution, not necessarily being mindful of what it looks like to be reliant on funding from sources that are particularly not, sorry, it happened again, aligned in the way that we are. Let's fix this, sorry. Is helpful. So I think, yeah, sorry, the camera thing kind of threw me there, but it's about leaning in for sure. Looking for new efficiencies among your network, and then identifying, being mindful about searching for partners who share vision and values.
That is incredible advice. And I know with this year, 2024, so many things are happening. Yes, as you said, leaning into finding those networks and looking inward and figuring out, your connection to your vision is going to be of the utmost importance. So thank you for sharing that. And
okay, please. Maybe add there is like, investments and diverse founders is good for business. And I think we've just got to be comfortable with saying that more often, because I think oftentimes we approach it from a place of this compelling storytelling that's around equity and like CSR. But there are lots of different compelling stories that I think a founder can tell to kind of get the resources that they need. And so also just thinking about, like, what is that compelling story and how does it differ from entity to entity, such that you can find alignment when you need to unlock additional resources.
Yes, compelling. Yes, all of that. So Jermeen, as we are wrapping up today, there's probably a lot of exciting things going on this year with Black Ambition, with your firm, with things that are happening. How can people find out more about you and what you're going to have going on this year?
Yeah, absolutely. 2024 is going to be an amazing year. We are all about bigger and better and more and deeper, and 2024 is going to be just that. So first, folks just need to know that the 2024 Black Ambition Prize application is now open. Every year we fund between 30 to 40 companies, cutting checks as big as $1 million to really help entrepreneurs scale their ventures. And so you definitely want to visit blackambitionprize.com to learn more about our prize competition process, the coaching and mentorship that we provide, just the comprehensive ecosystem that we've built to position founders of color to excel uninterrupted. On that website, you can learn more about the Black Ambition team as well, and all of the dynamic work that we do, as well as our personal projects. So our bios are there as well. And always looking for opportunities to connect with founders, with folks who are looking for opportunity to partner and really want to be a part of building this coalition of support for diverse founders. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Jermeen Sherman.
Fantastic. Well, there you have it, everyone. Another amazing episode of Why Relationships Matter. I mean, go volunteer. You never know who you're going to talk to. Lean into building those networks. Look inside of yourself and find those connection points between your vision and finding the folks out there that can help you bring that vision to life. All the amazing things we have learned today from Jermeen. And yes, just be intentional. That one phone call, that one email, that one small thing that you can do to help another person make a connection could potentially be that thing that takes them to the next level. So thank you so much for listening to us today. And as our founder, Joey Womack, always says, stay magnetic and outwork yesterday. Bye.